Hello, everyone, and welcome to Not Just Numbers, Honest Conversations with a Financial Advisor and Lawyer. I am Madison DeMora, and I'm here with Garry. Mike is a financial advisor and a CFP practitioner and the founder and the CEO of Yardley Wealth Management. He is also an estate planning lawyer, and his law firm is Yardley Estate Planning. Today, we are excited to welcome Dr. Emily Koochel, a leader in financial wellness, behavioral finance, and financial psychology. She is the manager of financial wellness at eMoney Advisor, where she leads research and education initiatives to improve the financial planning experience. With a PhD in applied family science and a master's in financial planning, Dr. Koochel brings deep expertise to the intersection of money, relationships, and behavior. She is a certified financial therapist, a credited financial counselor, and a behavioral financial advisor. She is a co-author of The Psychology of Financial Planning. Dr. Emily, welcome to Not Just Numbers.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here and to chat with y'all today.
Awesome. So we'll get right into the questions. What inspired you to pursue a career at the intersection of financial wellness, psychology, and behavior?
Yeah. So I won't give you my whole life story, but I will go back just a little bit to give some context to it. So as you mentioned, some of my education is in financial planning and then applied family science. So back when I was studying financial planning, I had the incredible opportunity to study amongst some of the pioneers in the field. So folks like Dr. Sonia Luter, Dr. Christy Archuleta, who have created the Financial Therapy Association and wrote books and all of these great things. And it was working with them that they start to kind of plant the seed. And I go off, start working with some clients, and it is fascinating that there's some general truths in financial planning that most financial professionals agree to. But I think we can also agree to the fact that there is a unique relationship to money for each individual. And it just became a curiosity that I needed to know more. If I understand the financial kind of expertise and technicalities of it all, what about understanding who we're giving that information to? So better understanding the dynamics of the individual, of the couples, of the families that we're working with, and not only just their relationship with money, but the dynamics between the individuals themselves. And that's really where financial planning gets a little more complex and a little more nuanced. And so went back and studied that more specifically, as you mentioned, in family science. From there, go to teach at a university teaching in financial planning. And then this really great opportunity comes along with eMoney, which is a financial technology company. And this certainly hadn't crossed my mind until seeing it. But if you value education, if you value and are passionate about making an impact in people's lives, wow, eMoney has the opportunity because they serve over 100,000 advisors. Those advisors then serve millions of clients. And so if you can take this information and scale it to those advisors and the clients that they're serving, you have a pretty incredible opportunity to make a true impact. And, I'll give credit where credit's due. eMoney also, had leadership in place that said, we find this valuable. And, serendipitously, at the time that I was joining eMoney, the CFP board was also saying that the psychology of financial planning is really important. They were adding it into their exam requirements. And so maybe it was a little less foreign to hear somebody like myself taking this perspective. But it worked out in a way that, the regulatory bodies were talking about it. The support was there. I had done a little bit of education to kind of gear up to it. And there's just this really great intersection of financial technology and planning and financial psychology that can be really meaningful to advisors to understand, but then ultimately to the clients that they're serving. So it's a little bit of a windy path, like I think most of us have in our careers, but
Sure.
eventually we get to kind of this cool place where we get to do really cool work.
That's way better than my windy path, which included law school. So,
Oh,
yeah. So no, that's very interesting. And having practiced now for 25 or 26 years, you learn things, right? And so I remember 25 years ago, like delivering financial plans and thinking like, well, there's like certain ways for the clients to achieve their goals. And it didn't take real long to understand that some people were just gonna not gonna do some things some ways. And so it was really important to come up with like a B plan or a C plan that would work. Because it's really easy to know, it's easy to learn that um, if clients are on board with their suggestions, they're way more likely for them to actually do them and not like sit on their hands or come up with reasons not. And so when you first meet people, sometimes it's hard to know what they're going to do, right? The initial planning, the first couple of months when you're working with somebody, you know them pretty well for a short amount of time, but you don't know them as well as you're going to get to know them after 5, 10, 20 years. And so it is interesting. Like sometimes we'll look at initial plans where um, we'll say, okay, well, these couple things we think you should do, and maybe this is a backup. And then, 5 years later, 10 years later, like, I can't believe I even suggested that first one because they're never going to do that. But the thought of being able to have some ideas and put that to scale, I think is really exciting. It's a really cool idea. And,
yeah.
I wish you a lot of luck with that because it could be really impactful.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I mean, it's suggested that only about 20% of clients who come into those initial conversations are actually ready to make a change. So those are your ideal clients, right? They're coming in with everything ready to go. You give a recommendation, they're doing it right away. And then there's the other 80% that are still looking for some of that buy-in, some of that understanding for you to, of course, showcase your skills, but ultimately to connect with them, to bring their financial life to life in a way that's unique to them. So there's generally an 80% out there that we still need to make that connectivity with that you're
Okay.
suggesting. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I guess of the 20% who are okay with changing it, some people are just fine with change, and some people are just fed up with the status quo and like, okay, I need to do something different. But yeah, it's interesting to know 80 that little another 80/20 rule.
Right. Yeah.
Right. All right. How do psychological factors influence our relationship with money?
Yeah, great question. So here's the deal. Our relationship with money starts really early on, and it actually starts earlier than most of us think that it does. So when we're young and even into our adulthoods, we're always trying to make sense of the world around us. We're trying to interpret it, we're trying to understand it. We're also trying to be a part of it, right? So we look to what's happening around us to mirror it and for us to again kind of interpret it. So when we're young, we actually start picking up on these money lessons well before we ever understand exactly what money is. And it happens in a couple of different ways. In research, we call this financial socialization, but there's a couple of different ways that this can happen. We have our explicit socialization, our explicit learning experiences. And so a really easy example of that is if you were paid money as you're doing chores as a young person, somebody gave you the money, but then also sat down and said, money is valuable and we should start a savings account. And they start instilling these money lessons, but they're saying it explicitly to you. The implicit is where a lot of us start to learn, and this is through the observation piece. This is we're observing if the person that we're going grocery shopping with is checking a budget or price comparing. Are they just grabbing things off the shelf and it really doesn't seem to be, kind of something that they're considering? Is it that money is considered taboo and it's secret and we don't really speak to it? Or do we have these really open and honest conversations when people are talking about money? Is it conflict? Are they speaking about it in a healthy way? Basically, we're absorbing all of this along the way. And it's informing our values, it's informing our beliefs, and it's informing our ultimately our behaviors and our decision making. And we continue to carry these into adulthood, whether we notice it or not. And through our own experiences, we then start to challenge them or maybe change them up. So let's say that you got your first job and you got your first paycheck and you're deciding how you want to manage that money. You may see some of that influence from, folks that you'd been around when you were younger coming up, or maybe you're getting into a relationship and now you're sharing those experiences and maybe they differ. But we continue to basically evolve our relationship with money over time. And it's through these experiences that it informs us. In socialization research, we also note that parents or parental figures are the most influential at the younger stages. And we certainly start to kind of pull away from that as we get our own individuality or autonomy around money. But they are really key players in this. And it's, again, well before we even realize that we're absorbing some of these money lessons that we then start to see show up into adulthood.
Very interesting. And while you were talking, I couldn't help but think that I have two biological sisters, a couple, and a stepbrother and stepsister, but the three of us grew up in the same household, and we have a lot of similarities, but then some things that we are very, very different. I guess some is like the learned experience of our parents, and others just like who we are, maybe, or other experiences, or how we react to experiences. I guess, right? Nobody reacts the same way necessarily. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
it's
interesting.
it's a good point. Like I have two siblings. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And there's some similarities to your point, but there are certainly some differences that we recognize in the way that we spend or save or use
Mhm.
money. And some of that comes with when you entered the family. Where was the family at in terms of their own financial stability? What was going on? Was there, any type of like job security or insecurity rather, or were we, what was happening? And then what was happening even more than that. So like it's called a family systems lens. Basically, we're all part of a really big system and there's influences coming from way far out. And then it all kind of comes down to the household. And so all of that can inform it. And to your point, even personality and characteristics that show up in different ways. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating that it starts so early on.
Mhm.
All right. What is one key takeaway you hope financial planners and clients gain from understanding the psychology of financial planning?
Yeah, so here's the deal. That experience with money is not isolated to just the clients. We all have our own experience with money, and we all have our own values and the way that we see the world in which, kind of money works. We as professionals bring that into our relationships with clients, and having an awareness of it is really important because it can influence the services that you provide, the conversations that you have, maybe your comfort level with some of those conversations versus others. And so, first and foremost, it's important to understand that you also have an influence inside of the client relationship. But flipping it to the client side, it's really important that clients feel understood and that they feel valued. And it is important to understand that there are all of these experiences and kind of complexities that are informing whether or not they make that decision that you are suggesting. So while it may appear to be quite black and white to them, there may be an experience that is informing them to be fearful or hesitant about it or excited about it. And so it's really important that we also take the time to understand the person underneath the financial recommendations that we're making, because we talked about, there are years of this influence that could be showing up here, whether we recognize it or not. And to be quite honest, most of us don't take the time to understand why I feel so deeply about, how I spend my money, or so deeply about why I should save. We don't necessarily do it unless we're prompted to. So it's ultimately bringing an understanding first of yourself, but then also an understanding of your clients. And that can really build a really strong advisor client relationship if we take the time to get to know one another.
Very good.
All right. In your role at eMoney Advisor, you lead the financial wellness team and research initiatives, aiming to expand financial advice beyond traditional planning to help clients achieve true peace of mind. How do you define financial wellness?
Really great question. If you type financial wellness into a website search, the amount of not only definitions, approaches, products, I mean, there's a ton out there. So certainly quite a buzzworthy word over the last few years. Something that we did inside of eMoney and other researchers in the field have kind of taken a similar approach of what is financial wellness. So I'll speak a little bit about what eMoney did more specifically. We basically went out, we did some of our research around, how are other folks thinking about it, looked at some common themes, and we broke it into a short definition and then a longer definition. So the short definition is that financial wellness is a positive state of being resulting from a healthy relationship with money, and then the impact that that has on other aspects of our life. Uh, but if we explore that just a little bit further, because we're talking about how complex we can certainly all be, um, we take it a step further, which is that financial wellness certainly has a lot of layers. And at the core of it is our relationship with money. Again, it's this positive state of being, but it's also looking at the impact that it has on other aspects of our life. So mental wellness, emotional wellness, physical wellness, relationship, and the spiritual health that we have, wellness expands to those. And the other thing we wanted to recognize is that there's certainly no specific amount of money that signifies that you have achieved financial wellness. Rather, it is the taking action to understand your financial situation, to understand your behaviors, and that wellness can look different for everybody based off of age or income, your aspirations, your goals, and just a whole host of other things. Even thinking about cultural aspects or community aspects that you're part of. It all kind of defines what we see as being financially well. But at the end of really all of it, it comes down to a feeling of confidence, of preparedness, of feeling secure, having some type of peace of mind with it. So it's pretty complex, but really it comes down to having a good, healthy relationship with money and recognizing that it can certainly have impact in all of these different areas or be informed uniquely from all of these different areas. And so it's important that as financial professionals, we encourage folks to and seek to understand really what is their version of being financially well so that we can help design a plan and an approach so that they feel financially well for themselves.
Right. I would say, without knowing all that much about it, other than what you just said, sometimes I have a sense that someone probably is financially well, and other people who could have 10 times as much money might not be. It is interesting the way those money scripts that we learn and then our experience over time. It's a fascinating job for me being an advisor and seeing how people handle money, and it's so different than what was thought even not that long ago, right? Like not that long ago, they thought, well, we're just all rational humans making these best decisions. Yeah, that I'm glad that all this research is being done, all this work is being done, because I think it has the ability to help a lot of people.
Yeah, you made a really good point. Perception is also a big piece of it. So you, to your point, can show somebody that they're financially well in terms of, this is going to all be okay, but they don't feel financially well. So we're dealing with a different challenge versus those who are thinking I'm financially well and they're thinking, strictly financially. And you're telling them, actually, I don't believe that you are. These indicators actually don't suggest that you should feel as good as maybe you feel.
Right.
And so again, there's a different challenge to this idea of financial wellness, but their perception certainly plays a role in that.
Right. So I think because of like our marketing and branding, we tend to attract people who are financially in pretty good shape. And I would say like 9 out of 10 are probably in better shape than they think or realize, but then the other 1 out of 10 are not. And, and sometimes those are hard conversations. And I'll tell them, like, we can't have you come back when you're 80 and say you're running out of money. So I have to tell you we have to have these conversations now, right? Like
Yeah.
there's kind of a time limit on it for me.
Yeah.
It's fascinating perception.
In your book, The Psychology of Financial Planning, in Chapter 8, Mediating Financial Conflict, you discuss strategies for resolving money-related disputes. Can you share an example of an effective approach to help couples find common ground on their financial goals?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So, first and foremost, financial conflict is natural, and I would argue is inevitable if we're thinking about, right, all of that stuff that informs our relationship with money. And even if, my partner and I, my spouse, whomever, have similar values, meaning we both believe it's important to save, the nuance comes in, well, I believe it's important to save for retirement. Well, I believe it's important to save for our kids' education. Okay, so we're agreeing that saving is important, but there's certainly some conflict here. And something that Rick Taylor in that book actually talks about is the idea of goal incongruence. And the way that he describes it is both people are in a canoe, but they're facing each other and they're both just paddling as hard as they can and they're making no progress. And I think we have observed that probably in people that we've worked with.
Sure.
And basically they're trying to get to something. And I guess naturally we want to be on the same page, I should also note, but we can find something from conflict. It's not just black and white, good or bad. There's something to be learned inside of conflict. So first and foremost, we can come from a couple of different angles. Positive psychology would suggest that we should do a little bit of framing for folks, help them out, let them know that, let's say we're taking that same conversation, somebody is really advocating for saving for retirement and somebody's really advocating for saving for education. Right. So we know that. So going into it, let's set kind of expectations of the conversation today. And I'm really hoping that we can get to a place where we both feel, or both parties feel good about walking away from today's conversation. We're really looking to find some type of resolution. So let's just set it on the table. Last conversation, we certainly hit some resistance. So let's get into it today. We can also draw from what's known as solution-focused approaches. So solution-focused is basically saying, hey, think about a time where maybe you have had conflict before, and how did you all come to be on the same page? So basically you're suggesting this is not new territory. We've been in conflict before. Go back to the tools that maybe you used previously and let's see if they apply to this particular situation. And some folks will start to figure it out for themselves. Oh, we talked about it in this way, or they made this suggestion and that was helpful. But let's say that doesn't work and they say, actually, that doesn't apply to this situation. We have another opportunity then to start to think about how we bring them together. So in this situation, we're not looking at compromise. It's kind of a common misconception that in conflict, we're looking for compromise, but we're actually looking for collaboration is kind of the best conflict resolution. And that means that we're taking more of a both and approach and both people feel like they're getting something from it. So in digging into it, you find out that the person who's looking to retire is concerned because they saw their parents struggle in retirement. They're really looking towards financial security. They don't want to repeat that. A person who is really advocating for financial education, for education funding is saying, I was really burdened with my own loans and I don't want to do that to the next generation. That's really important to me. In the midst of this, super important that the financial professional does not lean in one way or the other, even if we have our own preferences, certainly, but it is to support them to navigate through it. So in this case, we understand what's underlying, but now we can lean into the financial techniques that we have. We can start to model different scenarios that show what if we're actually contributing to education in this way and contributing to retirement in this way, and look at the success we can still have in the goals that you all have laid out for us. It's finding a way where both parties feel like they're being heard, they're being understood, and we've balanced the conversation, not somebody walking away feeling like I really had to give something up in that conversation.
That's great. It would be good to learn more tools. I find that when we have some sort of um, disconnect like that, I just keep asking them questions to get them to talk, and then mostly talk with each other to try to figure out, what that solution is going to be for them. But then talk to them about, like, maybe you can't set aside enough to send all of your kids to the most expensive schools and retire at 55, but there's a lot that you could do that's on the way there, and hopefully it's a way that can make both happy, and that inspires them to do what's necessary to try to make both happy. Because that's often the other part. Like, well, yeah, if you want to get both of those goals, then it's probably going to mean some other sort of trade-off in the time being. And a lot of times it's trying to make them aware of what those trade-offs might be, so then they can make the decisions that are right for them. And if they make the decisions, it's way more likely that they're going to do it. If I say you should do this, like, yeah, maybe they'll do it. But if they come to the decision of what they should be doing, and then they're both on board with it, they're way more likely to be successful and then both happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're hitting on motivation. Basically, if our intrinsic motivation, meaning what I believe is right, is far more it's sustaining than
Right.
extrinsic, meaning like somebody else told me I should do this, so I'm doing it. We are
Right.
far more motivated to stick to something that we came up with and we believe is super important. So sounds like you're doing a great job.
I don't know. It is not just numbers. That's the name of this podcast, right? Like, is really trying to figure out how to help people. But it's a great career, and I feel very, very fortunate that I get to do this and not working as a lawyer all the time.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. You've done award-winning research on financial transparency. How do financial secrets typically erode trust in relationships, and how can couples rebuild that trust?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So, in any relationship, we basically have this tension, and when we're forming new relationships, we deal with it a little bit more often. But basically, I have information that is private to me that I protect. But I know that in order to build trust in a relationship, build intimacy in a relationship, I essentially have to reveal some of that, and I'm hoping they reveal it back to me. And there's this whole kind of play off of I'm giving them something, hopefully they receive it well, and then we reciprocate and we start to build trust through that way. More specifically, when it comes to financial information, it tends to be really vulnerable and it tends to be even more intimate because of, again, all of this stuff that we're attaching to money. It's really valuable to me. It's being informed by all of, these other things. And so as we're building this trust, if somebody disrupts that trust, it is hurtful. One, because I thought that we had committed to this together. But more specifically, we see if it's financial distrust, financial infidelity, meaning that there's some type of deception there or they're omitting it, that it tends to be really impactful to the relationship because of how kind of intimate and vulnerable it is to us. And so with that, we then see this disruption to trust, or that the trust is really fragile. So when it comes to rebuilding that, for some, it will be a possibility. For others, that disruption to trust will be too much for them to repair it, and they'll have to kind of make decisions around that. But let's say that they do decide that they want to try to rebuild the trust. A lot of it is going to come back to communication, open and honest communication around money, but also creating a space where they feel safe to be able to do that. Because oftentimes when people are omitting or maybe choosing not to disclose something, we're basically going through a cost and rewards in our mind of, I could tell them this, but that may start a fight and I'd rather just keep it and let's take our chances on it. So we're going through kind of a cost reward scenario. So it's also creating a space where people can have a safe conversation around it. But it's building that transparency back up, and it's building that trust back up, which again, in compared to non-financial conflicts or non-financial conflicts rather, these can be super impactful to people. But it's all around this kind of privacy, and we shared something really deep with you, and you harmed us with that.
Right.
We have had many clients tell us they are really struggling since the last election. That happens all the time, but some of our clients seem much worse this time, and it hasn't faded as it often has. What do we say to them, and how can we help them?
So a lot of what happens, whether it's elections, the economy changing, any of these things, clients are often thinking about some uncertainty, right? And we don't like uncertainty. Uncertainty often kind of makes us feel fearful, or we're afraid of any type of instability. And so a lot of this is creating some reassurance there. And we can do that through our words, but we can also lean into the financial plans and what we've created. So it's also refocusing not just on what's happening short term and maybe what's even outside of our control. It's refocusing on, we do long-term planning. We are holistic in doing that, right? We've considered all of these scenarios, and it is about showing them the resilience to the financial plan, and the fact that we've kind of thought about this, right? And we're in it for the long haul. And so it's finding a way to get to that really basic kind of human nature in us, which is, I'm just afraid of what all of this means. And the great thing is we can use the work that we've done together to offer that reassurance, and maybe even at times offer some education, because we're receiving information from all of these different resources. Some we're getting in, short videos or headlines. And so some of it may just be some miscommunication. We also have the opportunity to offer some education around why they're going to be okay, essentially.
Doc, you hit on something that I can't believe I've never really thought of before, or thought of this way before, right? So when we stress test clients' plans, sometimes it's just like an overall like Monte Carlo type simulation. Sometimes they have very specific things that they want to say, like, what if I lose my pension? Will I still be okay? Or if stocks go down like they did in 08 or 09. I guess what we could talk to people is like, yeah, we can't think of the infinite things that may come up. But when we test your plan to say like a lot of bad stuff can happen and you'll still be okay. If this feels like the bad stuff to you, well, then it's like we we tested it for this. You can't, like, life is infinite possibilities. Like, who knows what could happen? So we can't actually think about all of them. But we have thought about some specifically, and then just generally others. And so so right. Often people say like, I never expected this. Well, yeah, there's lots of stuff that we never expected. We can't expect it all. But knowing that we do test for all kinds of uncertainty, well, this is part of that uncertainty. And it's expected, and we know things like this are going to come up, and it's okay. So
Yes.
thanks. Like, yeah, I never put that together before like that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. Thank you.
Many people focus on the financial aspect of retirement, but for some, the bigger challenge is the psychological shift. How do you help individuals who are financially ready to retire but struggle with the emotional and psychological aspects of stepping away from their careers? And what strategies can they use to ease this transition?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great question. So much of what we do is in our jobs, and there is a ton of our identity that's wrapped up in our jobs, whether or not we want to be held out that way or not. But even if you think about, some of the first questions that people ask you when you meet them, they say, "Hey, what's your name? What do you do? Where are you from?" And it feels like this is this representation of ourselves. So one, there's a ton of identity wrapped up into it. it also in our jobs, it is structure in our lives, right? I know where I go, I know what I do. It's a sense of community for some, and it's a sense of my contribution to the world or to what, I do in my life. And when we step away from that, we feel sometimes as though we're stepping away from a lot of those identity pieces. And that's tough. First and foremost, it's just tough. Because some of us voluntarily step away from our jobs, some involuntarily step away from our jobs. And so resources and what's surrounding that prompt to retire is also going to inform maybe the way that folks feel about it. But there's also this really fascinating research around future self. And basically, it's saying that the more that we can connect to our future self, which is really important in financial planning, a ton of what we do is future oriented. We're taking a lot of action today for something that you're saying is going to happen several years from now, or even, as we're preparing for retirement, maybe a few months. But it's this idea of future self, and it's connecting individuals to those long-term motivations, and also doing it in a way that is vivid to them or self-reflecting to them. So if you've ever heard somebody say something like, I can't see myself lying on a beach in retirement, or I'm never getting married again, I can't manage a household on my own, they're kind of thinking of what this could be. It actually could be reflecting more than just this self-doubt that's going on. It could be that they're having a hard time with this future self continuity, meaning like they just can't picture themselves in that future self or that future stage of life. And so what's important is to be able to start to connect that to them, not only for them to feel comfortable, but also to feel motivated. Oh my gosh, I can't wait till I get to do that. That sounds great. I want to, in some ways, step away from the stress of my job or the structure of the job. And so it's bringing that to life. And we can do that through just kind of some visualization prompts, first and foremost. So if we're talking about retirement in general, well, obviously one of the questions is, what do you see in retirement? But go a little bit deeper. Oh, I see the ability to travel to do what? To see my grandchildren. Tell me about your grandchildren. What would you do with them? It's bringing all of it to life. And so it's not just the idea of retirement, it's the idea of, I've got a whole other next chapter that I'm really excited to get to. And that's some of the motivation. And it allows us to not be, to not feel like we're giving up so much from that work structure and community, but it's defining what that next chapter really looks like for folks. And that future self continuity is proven to be really, really helpful for people.
Okay, yeah, I could see people needing that. I could see that I will need that at some point. I've been doing this for this firm for 20 years now. In the first 15, I worked an absurd amount of time, and it is totally wrapped up in my identity. And apparently I'm not going to live forever. And yeah, so we'll have to work on that. Yeah, and you see people, people come in and they have been saving for 40 years or longer, and it's always been some time in the future, and then all of a sudden it's not the future anymore, it's the present and the current. And most of the time after people have been retired for a couple of years, they seem to be okay with everything, and some people gravitated pretty quickly. But I think that that time when either there's a known date or a very soon date is coming up through sometime after that, I think people really struggle with it, for the most part, at least the people that we see. And then, as you said, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, there's a lot more involuntary, say, than there may have been in a distant past. But yeah, people are like told that it's time and might not have a lot of options. Some people seem to, and other people don't. And yeah, it could become finite all of a sudden. You have a small amount of notice that your whole world is changing. Yeah, you can see why it's disruptive to people.
Yeah. You also made, just kind of a good point about I've been told my whole life to save for retirement, and I've done a really good job of doing that, right? Like I made the commitment to do that. And now you're telling me not to? I mean, you're changing my whole philosophy around money,
Right.
that I no longer need to save. Well, how do you know I'm going to be okay to not have this income in a way that I've traditionally seen it coming in, and to dedicate money to it? I mean, the whole philosophy to switch on somebody of saying, actually, you don't need to be working for this to work any longer.
Right.
That can be really scary for folks. And, similar to what we can do with the financial plan in other ways is, showing, no, really, it's going to be okay. We've
Right.
thought about this, we've considered all of it. But you can understand that somebody who's been really dedicated to saving 30, 40 plus years for something, to turn that off mentally is
Right.
certainly challenging and a little scary. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, like and some of the conversations would probably be surprising to people who haven't gone through retirement yet. Where people say, well, where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from this mountain of money that you've saved for the last 40 years. We're like, how can I afford this in retirement? Okay, see that IRA you've been saving, since the 1980s? Like that is literally what it's for. Like it's literally an individual retirement account. You're retired, and then you could take that money out. And sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, that's what it's for. It's okay. That is the next step. And but yeah, I think until they go through it, more people struggle with it than they probably think, right? When you're in your 20s and 30s and grinding through work, or even like your 40s and thinking like that's never going to end, then it comes up to where it's ending and it's normal and it's like that stage of life and there's no financial impediments. People still like, well, it's not time yet, but it is and can be, and it's okay, and it's good. Spend that time with your spouse or partner, or spend more time with your grandkids. Your kids will love the free babysitting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. It's about getting them to kind of think about it, and think about it in a different way, in a way that's not scary or fearful. And it is just reiterating again kind of this basic human element of, we tend to fear uncertainty, or what feels or is perceived as uncertain. So anything we can do to settle that just very human response is, I think, always really helpful, especially in such a massive, this is one of our, biggest life transitions for
Yeah.
for folks. And so um it's also really cool to have the opportunity to help them get to that point, and then to kind of celebrate it with them and show them like, wow, look at all the work you did. Now you really get to enjoy it. How great is that?
Right. Right. No, it is great. Yeah. Doc, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time. And I can't thank you enough. I think
Yeah.
this is going to be really worthwhile for the listeners and viewers.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was really nice meeting you, and this was a great conversation. Like Mike said, I think our listeners are really going to enjoy it. So thank you. For more information on Yardley Wealth Management or Yardley Estate Planning, you can visit our website at yardleywealth.net and yardleyestate.net. You can also follow us on socials at Yardley Wealth Management. Don't forget to smash the like button if you enjoyed this episode. This podcast has been produced by Madison, DeMora, and Mike Garry with technical and artistic help from Poe Productions.